Hey guys, so tonight's topic that we're looking at are elections and government in Virginia. So, as we continue to expand outside Jamestown, what did elections and the early form of government in Jamestown and Virginia look like? So, it's important to understand that the original form of government that was established at Jamestown and Virginia was not very successful. So you should remember by now that the king chartered or gave authority to the Virginia Company in London to establish this colony at Jamestown. And or with that authority, the Virginia Company basically had final say. And so what they did is they selected a council to run the colony. They selected a small group of gentlemen who went across with these voyages to run the colony. But the problem was the leaders on the council often bickered and fought with each other. So this form of government really wasn't working particularly well. So the Virginia Company decided that they were going to appoint a governor who was going to be in charge. The governor had final authority, made all of the decisions with the help of the council. The council still could advise, do some of the smaller tasks, but really the governor was the person who had the most authority and could make final decisions for the colony. Eventually, though, in 1619, the council added an elected assembly. So this elected assembly was called the House of Burgesses. And this is important because it's the first elected body in the American colonies. And this will be the precursor of the Virginia General Assembly and later the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate, so the U.S. Congress. So the way it worked was that each county in Virginia elected two burgesses to represent them. So each county got two representatives. County, so you know, we're expanding just beyond Jamestown now as time moves on and we spread out and take over more territory. The English settlers are taking over more territory. We establish new counties. And so every free white landholder could vote if he showed up to vote. So there was a minimum of 25 acres. You had to be free, had to be white, and you had to own at least 25 acres. This also excluded females. You had to be a male to vote. And if you were an indentured servant, you didn't own land, definitely didn't own 25 acres of land. So you didn't have the right to vote. Slaves obviously did not have the right to vote. So these are just wealthy white men are the only people who are allowed to even vote. In the voting process, oftentimes when you think of voting, you guys think of something like this. Maybe you've been with your parents as they voted when you were growing up. So forming orderly lines, you wait your turn, you go and you check in, and then you're given a ballot, and then you take your ballot and do some secret, or you secretly fill in, and then you turn in your vote secretly. Nobody really knows what's going on. You don't have to share who you voted for. There's some discussion in the voting lines, but really not a lot. Everybody kind of just minds their own business. That's not the way elections worked in early Virginia. So here's a painting to kind of give you a sense. This is a painting from much later, but it does give you some inspiration or idea of what was going on at these elections. So this is called a county election. There's a painting by George Caleb Bingham. You can see it's a much more social affair. You don't just go to the voting place and then leave. People are gathered and they're hanging out there all day. You can see up at the top of the courthouse steps, that's the building on the right, there is an official who's taking the ballots from people. Everybody's gathered around. There's people who are drinking. There's kids hanging out. There's dogs running around. It was really like an all-day social gathering for the whole community. But remember, only the free white men were the ones allowed to actually vote. So voting was done at the county courthouse, and it was run by the sheriff of the county. The sheriff ran the election. And as opposed to turning in the ballot like you saw on that, originally what you had to do was orally or tell with speak out loud, the sheriff who you were voting for, which could get kind of awkward because oftentimes the candidates were sitting with the sheriff. So they knew exactly who was and was not voting for them. And sometimes the candidates would kind of use alcohol, rum, or beer to try and sway some votes. You could be treated by one of the candidates with some alcohol if you vote for them. So to gain their support, they would offer up some libation to individuals who cast the vote in their direction. So who actually served in this House of Burgesses? Well, they really came from a small segment of the population. The leaders of the House of Burgesses were often large landholders. They were often college educated. They were frequently members of the Anglican Church, which is the Church of England. They were usually tobacco planters who owned many slaves. And many of them were actually relatives or really close friends with each other. About half of them were connected to just three important families: the Carter family, the Lee family, and the Randolph family. So this should give you the sense that really leadership in Virginia was only available to a small group of people. And the assembly itself, this House of Burgesses, didn't have a lot of power at the beginning. It could suggest and discuss proposed laws, but still the real power rested with the governor. The governor could veto any laws that the House of Burgesses tried to pass. And that brings us to our response question for tonight. And that question is, if the House of Burgesses didn't have that much power, then why was it such a big deal? Almost every source we've looked at so far has discussed this House of Burgesses. So what makes it such a big deal? What I want you to do is connect it to one of or more of our 5 ideals that we discussed at the beginning of the year. So older was the acronym that we used to remember: opportunity, liberty, democracy, equality, and rights. So connect this House of Burgesses to one of these 5 ideals and try and explain why it's so important to know about and learn about this House of Burgesses. Please make sure you print off your notes and have them before you come to class tomorrow.